Good evening, all. We will start this session with a prayer. Shruti will be doing the prayer. Shruti.
महागणपति स्मरामि महागणपति स्मरामि महागणपति स्मरामि वसिष्ठवामदेवनिवन्दितमहागणपति महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं महादेवसुतं गुरुगुहनुतं मानकोटि प्रकाशं शान्तं काव्यनाटकप्रियं मूषिकवाहनमोदकप्रियं पप्पमगमरि सरिसनिरपमगमप्पा पप्पमगमरि सरिसनिरपमगमपारनि सरिगं मरि सनि सनि पम सनि पमगमरि गरि 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 सिरि सा सनि द मरि सा निगममहा गणपतिं स्मरामि महागणपतिं स्मरामि वसिष्ठवामदेवनिवन्दितमहागणपतिम्.
Thank you, Shruti. Today we have with us Shri Nitin Sridhar. He is a civil engineer turned author and speaker. He is passionate about topics related to culture and philosophy. He is based in Mysore. He is currently chief curator of Advaita Academy, dedicated to the dissemination of Advaita Vedanta. He is also consulting editor to Indic Today magazine. Previously, he was editor of India Facts. His first book, Musings on Hinduism, provided an overview of various aspects of Hindu philosophy and society. His latest book, Samanya Dharma, is on general principles of ethics as available in Hindu texts. However, his most widely read book is Menstruation Across Cultures, a Historical Perspective. This examines menstruation notions and practices prevalent in different cultures and religions from across the world. His upcoming book is Ishopanishad, an English commentary. Today he is with us to spend this evening and give us a talk on Dharma and Adhyatma. I heartily welcome you, Nitin Mahodaya. Please, you may start the talk.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Let me just start with a prayer. Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavad Vyapta Dehaya Dakshina Murtaye Namaha. Shruti Smriti Purana Namalayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Bharati Karuna Patram Bharati Patabhushanam Bharati Padamarudam Bharati Tirthamashraye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvagyam Vidushekara Bharati. A very good evening to everyone, and I'm extremely thankful to Gurudaji for inviting me to speak today. I'm extremely happy to be here, and The topic that I'll be speaking today, Dharma and Adhyatma, it's a topic which is very close to my heart in a personal sense. I have been researching, I have been writing, and it is part of my day-to-day life, both these aspects, Dharma and Adhyatma. And uh, to begin with, the title itself, I like to begin with the title. There are two words here, Dharma and Adhyatma. Let me begin with the Adhyatma part and then come to the Dharma part. Often, when we speak of Adhyatma, usually in English or even otherwise, we think about spirituality. We ask, did you make spiritual progress? What are you doing? Are you interested in spirituality? So this is the kind of language we use. But consider this, though even I may be using the term spirituality for ease for the course of this discussion, spirituality, the term does not actually capture what Adhyatma is. Adhyatma means Adi Atma. Atma is the focal word here. Adhyatma refers to that which belongs to Atma, that which is with reference to Atma, belonging to Atma, such meaning is there. But what is spirituality? Spirituality refers to spirit. But is spirit Atma? That is an interesting question. Spirit is a kind of it has a Christian connotation. It's a English word rooted in Western culture, Western theology, Christian theology, and uh, it is not possible to actually correlate spirit with any of the Indic terms, any of the Hindu terms. I mean, we have so many terms because our here Sanatana Hindu Dharma is so vast, so deep. We have so many terms to understand different states of existence, to different aspects of psychology. We have terms like Atma, Pratyagatma, Brahma, Kshetrajna, Sharira, so many words. So what is this spirit then? So we must understand that even though we are speaking about spirituality, actually what we are speaking is Adhyatma, that which belongs to self, or belonging to self, or related to self, or the topic of self. So what is Atma? I just translated Atma as self, but what is this self? That is the first question that comes to mind. The Upanishads say, I am Atma Brahma. My Atma is Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. Tattvamasi. You are Brahman. Pragyanam Brahma. Consciousness is Brahman. So these are called as Mahavakyas. I know anybody who is even basically familiar with Vedanta will know these Mahavakyas. So, but to understand these statements, I am Atma, Brahma, and all, we need to understand the Atma, we need to understand the Brahma. Atma, as is translated, Atma refers to self. But what is this self? What is the most everyday notion of the self? Let's begin there, right? I speak about, I say, I am Nitin. When I introduce myself, I am Nitin Sridhar. I am author of 6 books. I am chief curator of Advaita Academy. Or somebody may say, I am tall, I am short, I am intelligent, I am handsome, I am beautiful. So when we speak in a day-to-day life about I, we are always speaking with respect to what I am or what I have, right? That I am tall, I am short, I own a car, I own a house. The I in this sentence is the anchor for the other definition. If I simply say Nitin, if I simply say car, if I simply say rich, it makes no sense. Only when I say that I am rich, that makes sense. So the I is what gives existence, gives meaning to the whole sentence. And that I is Atma. That I is beyond the descriptions that we add to it, that we superimpose to it. That I is distinct from the superimpositions of name, of our attributions like rich, poor, etc. It is also distinct from our body and mind consciousness. Usually when I say that I am Nitin, I identify with myself with this whole personality. And what is this personality? The Vedanta, the Upanishad says that we are not just this body, like this. Modern science says that we are made up of this physical body with bones and brains and organs and blood, etc. But Vedanta says that you are not just that. The physical aspect is just your Annamaya Kosha or your Sthula Sharira, the gross body. But there are other layers, other aspects of your personality. We have Pranamaya Kosha, which is Pancha Pranas, Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. These 5 pranas control the activity of the physical body, like inhalation, exhalation, circulation, excretion, all those things. And then you have Manomaya Kosha, which is the mind, Manas, which is the Manas activity of the Manas is to think, giving a thought process, thinking the different options, different how things are, whether should I do this, should I do that, and all those things. And then we have Buddhi, which is Vijnanamaya Kosha. Buddhi is the intellect, and we have this Indriyas, of course, the 5 Gyanendriyas, that is the eyes, the power to see, the power to hear, power to touch, power to smell. And we have Karmendriyas, our ability to grasp things with our hands, ability to walk, ability to excrete, ability to speak, all these things. And finally, we have Anandamaya Kosha, which is experience of pure Sukha. Basically, so all this, the Indriyas, the mind, the Panchapranas, all this together are called as Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body. And beyond this is Anandamaya Kosha, which is called as Karana Sharira, because Karana, it is causal, it causes. Karana Sharira is the storehouse of all our previous actions, which gives rise to this new body. Without going to deep on all these things, the point is, when I am saying aham, normally we identify with the whole personality with its 3 shariras, with its panchakoshas, but just a more reflection will reveal that the real I is distinct from this body mind complex. Just for example, as I said in a statement that I own a car, that I is distinct from the car, the owning and the car part, right? Similarly, I have a feeling that I am the body. I am this body, I am this name. But when you sleep, when you are in dreaming, in a dream, you can go to America, you can go to moon, you can go to Mars, you can go to create your own planet and live there, you can do anything and everything. But you are not doing it with your physical body. You do not have a consciousness of this physical body. In fact, in the dream, you have created a dream body for yourself, with which you self-identify. This shows that the aham, the I, is distinct from the physical body. Similarly, when you are in a deep sleep state, sometimes it happens, we are in such a deep sleep that there will be 0 dreams. There will be no consciousness per se that we are in this deep sleep. Only after we get up in the morning, we have this feeling, oh, I had such a nice sleep. Oh, I had such a deep sleep, no disturbance, no awareness of the body, no awareness of the mind, no dreams, nothing. I had such a beautiful sleep. What was that state? If the aham, the I-ness was just the mind, just the indriyas or the panchapranas, all these, the mind, etc., are not active in your deep sleep state. If the mind was active, then you would have seen a dream, you would have felt something, perceived something, but it was not active. Mind was in a sushupti. This is called a sushupti, sleep state. But even then, when you get back, you have this memory that you were in a deep sleep, beauty sleep. That is because there was an I, the awareness, even in the deep sleep state. So when I say that Atma, Adhyatma, belonging to self, the Atma is our true self, which is distinct from the body, distinct from the mind, distinct from the state of deep sleep. It is called as Turiya Avastha, the fourth, which is beyond all of this. Though it is beyond all of this, from a Vyavaharika perspective, when we are trying to understand what this true Atma is, we say that it is beyond all of this. It is distinct from all of this. But what is the major aspect of this distinction? It is that this Atma is Brahman. This Atma is Brahman. What does it mean? The Taittiriya Upanishad defines Brahman as, there are two definitions, of course. One is that Yatova Bhutan Imani Bhutani Jayante, that is, know that as Brahman, from which all the objects in the universe has originated, in which all the objects in the universe are sustained, and into which all these objects have laya, are destroyed or dissolved. But there is another definition. This is the basically with definition with respect to the Jagat. But there is a higher definition, transcendental definition. What is that? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is Satya, Jnana, Ananta. Another thing, the way we say is Satchidananda Brahma. That is also we use. So we are saying the Atma is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. So the Atma is Sat Chitta Anand. Satyam Jnanam Ananda. What is this? As I said, Sat is the existence, that which always exists, that which exists on its own, and that which is eternal. Satya is that which is Nitya. So our Atma is Satya. Our body is not. Our body keeps changing. Just imagine, when we were child, our body was just this big, right? It was very small. Now, as we grow, our body's shape, size, color, everything grows, right? Our body is always changing. Our mind is changing. Our thoughts are changing. When we die, we leave this body, we leave this Sthula and Sukshma Sharira both. We discard it and take up a new Sthula and Sukshma Sharira, just like we change our clothes every day. But Atma is existence. Atma is unchanging existence. That is why when I said that I am rich, I am Nitin, I am soldier, I am author, whatever description we give, one unchanging thing in all this description is the I. And that real I is the existence. The rest descriptions are just superimpositions, changes that we mistake as being the I. Second is Chit or Jnanam. What is Jnanam? What is Chit? Adi Shankaracharya gives a very good example to understand it in his Ekashloki. You know, he explains Advaita Vedanta through a single shloka called Ekashloki. It's in a question and answer form, but I will just give a gist. Basically, in the morning, when we go out, in the morning when we get up, we see all the things around us. We see the table in the room, we see the fridge in our house, we see the other persons, our spouses, our children with us. What facilitates our perception? What helps us to see these things? It is the sunlight and the eyes. Similarly, in the night, it is the deepam or a candlelight or a tube light and our eyes. But what about when we close our eyes? When we close our eyes, we still see some images. When we close our eyes or when we are dreaming, we still see some images. We still see the world, a different world, but nevertheless, we perceive something, we understand something. What makes this possible? It is the mind, the manas. But manas is a jadavastu by itself. It is like a moon. It does not have a self-luminance. So there must be some sun distinct from it, right? That sun is Atma. Atma is Pragyanam Brahma. That is what one of the Upanishads says, Pragnanam Brahma. So Atma is the consciousness. It is the knowledge. It is the Jnanam. It is that which that shines everything. It is self-shining. It is like the sun which is self-luminous. So that is why Atma is Chit or Jnanam. And then Atma is Anantam. It is not limited. See, our body and mind are the limitations, you know. When you are in the body, we can only do certain things. For example, we cannot fly like Superman, right? Or we cannot crawl like Spider-Man. But in your dreams, we can fly like Superman. We can imagine to do that, right? We can imagine to crawl like Spider-Man. The physical body has certain limitations. It has limitations with respect to movement, limitations with respect to various kind of, it feels heat, cold, it falls ill. But not just that, even the mind has its limitations. The mind feels happiness sometimes, the mind feels sorrow sometimes. These are all the limitations. But Brahman or Atma, our true self, is infinite. It is limitless. It has no limitation whatsoever. So in its true state, it is infinite. That is why it is called as Ananta. It is infinite. It is infinity. So when we say that Atma is infinite, then we will have to say that it is Ekam. As the Isha Upanishad puts it, Atman is Ekam. Here Ekam means one, but this one is not a numerical entity, but it is that there is only one infinity. There cannot be two infinity. There cannot be many infinity. Infinity, when we speak about infinite, it is only one. That is Atman alone exists. So Satyam Jnanam Anantam. And another term we also use is Ananda. It is merely to refer that when we are in the body mind, when we identify with our body and mind complex, we have all this kind of Sukha and Dukkha. Sometimes we feel happy, sometimes we feel sad. But when we are established in our true self, we have only Anandam, what is translated usually as bliss. Madhusudana Saraswati defines this Anandam as Sukha without Dukkha. And attaining this state itself is called as Moksha. So we are speaking about, I am still speaking about Adhyatma. So I just noted, just to summarize what I just said, Adhyatma means that belonging to Atma. So the first question is, what is Atma? Atma is that which is distinct from the body-mind complex, that which is distinct from the three states, the three shariras, the panchakoshas. That is Atma, that which is Nitya, that which is Satya, that which is Jnanam, that which is Ananda, that which is Ananta is Atma. Ayam Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi. So when it is said Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi, it is not the Jiva, that is the physical body, the person who identifies with this physical frame, who is being identified with Brahman. But it is the real self, the Atma is which is identified with Brahman. Therefore, the Vedanta, the Upanishad says, the way for moksha is Atma Jnana, Atma Swarupa Jnana, Aparoksha Anubhuti. Aparoksha Anubhuti means direct knowledge. When I say that Aham Brahmasmi, it is just a statement, but I have to realize it firsthand, not through books, not just as an intellectual process. But then you might ask, a doubt may appear here. Let me clarify. Moksha or mukti generally means freedom from the cycle of birth and death. We take birth, this is called Shadvikriyas. We undergo Shadvikriyas again and again. What are these Shadvikriyas? We exist in a potential condition, then we take birth, then we undergo growth, then we undergo transformation, then we undergo decay, and finally we die. And again, this cycle begins, re-begins. We take another birth, another growth, another death. It goes on and on and on. This is the karmic cycle, and it is governed by our own karmas, the karmic law, so to speak, karma and karma phala. Then how can you say that this is karma is this karmic cycle, karma is the cause for this bondage? Then how can you define mukti as just knowing your true self, knowing that Atma is Brahma, knowing that Atma is Satchidananda Brahma? The reason here is Atma in its true state is ever free. It has no limitation. It is one non-dual truth. It is Advaitam. It is without a duality because it alone exists. However, because of its own Maya Shakti, it has manifested this world of multiplicity. And it has manifested itself. It has appeared. It is not a real manifestation like the milk which turns into a curd. It is not a manifestation like that. It is an apparent manifestation or vivarta, wherein the Atma perceives, the Brahman perceives itself as many number of jivas experiences in this world. One Atma, one Brahman becomes many Purushas, many Atmas, becomes the Ishvara, becomes the Jiva, and becomes the Jagat. It is through his Maya. Maya is that which is not. Jagat is that which is not. But Brahman himself appears as Jagat. Just like when in a dark room, there is a rope lying down, and this is the famous Advaitic example. And you just enter the room and suddenly you get a fright thinking that there is a snake. Just for a moment, that fright lost. But the moment you realize that there is only a rope, not a snake, the appearance, the snake you perceived vanishes. Similarly, this Jagat. Because we are not aware about, we are ignorant about our own true nature, the true nature of our Atma, we think that we are distinct from Ishvara, and Ishvara is distinct from us, Jagat is distinct from us. We have this dual world, the subject-object distinction. So the whole karmic bondage comes into play because of this avidya or adhyasa. See, from avidya arises this adhyasa that we superimpose upon the I, the true I, that we are body, we are mind, and all those things. So we have to remove this superimposition that I am the body, I am the world, I am rich, I am poor, my mind is this, that, nama, rupa, etc. identities. When we remove these identities, then comes a stage, this is the whole Vedantic process. We have to go to the Guru gives the Upadesha, then you reflect upon this Upadesha, then you contemplate upon the Upadesha. This is called Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa, and finally has the Atma Sakshatkara. When you contemplate continuously, a stage comes when you have the Atma Jnana rises as a Vritti Jnana, Atma Jnana Vritti or Akhandakara Vritti Jnana, which destroys the avidya vritti, which destroys the adhyasa vritti in the mind, such that the Atma, the true self, shines forth in its true form, in its real form. It is always shining forth. But because of this, all these superimpositions, we are not able to realize that. So attaining moksha means attaining jnana, becoming established in our own self. That is why the Isha Upanishad in the very opening verse says, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjita askasyasvit dhanam tena tyaktena bunjita. Tena tyaktena means renounce all the attachment to the world. See, Ishavasyam idam sarvam, the Ishvara or Brahman is inhabiting, pervading everything in the world. He is the real existence. The Nama and Rupa are just external manifestation, external just appearance, but the real essence of all of this is that Atma, Brahma. So, therefore, realizing this Nitya Vastu, you renounce your attachments to the world, to the objects of the world, and become established in your real self and enjoy your real self. Tena tektena bunjita. Bunjita means enjoy. It also means protect. To summarize, Shankaracharya famously says that Bhagavad Pada says, Brahmo Satyam Jagan Mityam Jivo Brahmaiva Naparha. Brahman is Satyam, that is only thing that exists, always, that is permanent, eternal, and Jagan Mithya. Mithya means Jagat is not real in the sense of eternally existing. It exists so long as we are able to perceive it. That is, it has a beginning, it has a end. It goes through the, as long as avidya is there, it is there. But when the avidya is removed, the Jagat does not exist. So it is not Satya in the sense of always existing, but it is also not Asatya in the sense of never existing. Example for Asatya is a barren woman's child. By definition, a barren woman is one who cannot give birth. But their child, when we say, that is something non-existent. So the Jagat is not like that. It is Nityam, neither Satya nor Asatya. Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. Jiva is Brahman, not different. So that is the basis of Upanishadic understanding of Adhyatma. This is the goal of Adhyatma. Moksha is this. Attaining this Jnanam that Ayam Atma Brahma is Moksha. This Jnanam liberates one. This Jnanam frees one of all the bondage of the samsara. So then comes the question, how to attain this Brahman? How to attain this Atma Jnana? See, I am not going to too much detail into Vedantic aspect. In my upcoming book, my next book is an English commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad. It's a short 18 mantra Upanishad, wonderful Upanishad. And many of the things that I am speaking today, I have dealt it in much more depth in the book. So it will be released in a week or two. It was supposed to release on Deepavali. So please check it out. And it is a wonderful work. I have put in 7 years, 8 years to bring out that book, to check it out. So anyways, so the next question is how to attain this Ayam Atma Brahma stage. And that is where Dharma comes into play. What is Dharma? There are different definitions of Dharma. And again, on Dharma, I have written a very short booklet, Samanya Dharma. This is the short booklet. I will be reading out a few passages from this book. It's a very short 100-page book, which focuses on Dharma, basic definition of Dharma, what are the basic principles of Dharma that we need to practice. The Shastras give many definitions of Dharma. One of the most easiest or most obvious definition is the grammatical one, the term the Dharma itself, which is Dharayate iti Dharma. Dharma is that which Dharana. Dharana means sustaining. upholding. That which upholds is dharma. But what is dharma upholding? What is it that dharma is upholding? One of the Upanishad says, Dharma Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha. Dharma is that which establishes, which upholds, which sustains the world, the entire universe, the whole cosmos, the whole Srishti itself. I will just read out the whole, verse so that you can appreciate the beauty of the definition here. The Mahanarayana Upanishad says this. Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha Loke Dharmishta Praja Upasarpanti Dharmena Papamanudati Dharme Sarvam Pratishtitam Tasma Dharmam Paramam Vadanti. See the beauty of this definition. It is saying so many things in just 4 lines. It is saying Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha. It is the support of the whole world. Loke Dharmishta Praja. All people draw near a person who is rooted in Dharma. Dharmena Papamanudati. That is, through Dharma, one removes all Papam. Papam means all the wrong activity, unethical activity, all the criminal activities that we do, all the adharmic activities that we have done. The Papam that incurs, the guilt that incurs from these adharmic activities, we will be purified, we will be freed of it through practice of dharma. Dharme sarvam pratishtitam. Dharma upholds, dharma sustains everything, everyone. Tasmad, that is why dharmam paramam vadanti. Dharma is considered as paramam, highest. So from this we know that dharma is something which has a very broad definition. It upholds the universe, it upholds the world, it upholds the environment, it upholds human society, it upholds an individual. So some might feel overwhelmed by this definition, and it is obvious because it is very abstract. As individuals, we are more concerned with what this definition mean to me and you. What does it mean when it says dharma is something that upholds me, sustains me? What is it? In the Manudharma Shastra, it says, when the Srishti happens, for the sake of creating discrimination, that is vivekam, discretion in the people about what actions to be done and what actions to be not done, the karma, karya and akarya, what is to be done and what is not to be done. For the sake of this, Brahmaji created the notion of dharma and adharma. Dharma is those actions that should be done, that is beneficial to us, and adharma are those actions which should not be done. Now we get some more better idea about what is dharma. Dharma, as well as its counterpart adharma, in the individual context refers to action. Still the question remains, what kind of actions becomes dharma? What is the criteria? So there is another definition. This definition is in Vaisheshika Sutras. It says, Yato abhyudaya nishreyasa siddhi sa dharma. Yataha, those actions, siddhi, helps us to accomplish abhyudaya and nishreyasa. What is abhyudaya? Abhyudaya refers to material welfare, attainment of overall welfare in this world. It may be your pleasures, it may be prosperity, it may be wealth, family, everything. Basically attaining happiness or sukha in a materialistic. But what is nishreyasa? Nishreyasa refers to attaining anandam, attaining the ultimate goal of life, which is moksha. So dharma is that which can give you abhyudaya, material well-being, and nishreyasa, which is spiritual well-being. With this in mind, now we have a more clarity about what is dharma. Dharma is a means which can help us attain material goals. It is also a means which can help us attain adhyatmic goals. It is a prerequisite. It is the tool which facilitates us to travel the path of adhyatma to finally attain atma jnana and moksha. And we will get more into this, how it does that. In the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Shankaracharya Bhagavad Pada says, he gives this definition of dharma as sustaining the world, the abhyudaya, nishreyasa and all, and he says dharma is of two types, nivritti dharma and pravritti dharma. And this is very important because this helps us to locate where we stand as individuals. What is nivritti dharma? Nivritti dharma is basically dharma of the sannyasins. It is a dharma of the vairagyans. It is dharma of those who have developed intense dispassion and detachment towards the worldly objects, worldly pleasures. They have realized that, look, all the objects in the world are temporary. They are anitya vastu. They are not nitya vastu. There is only one nitya vastu, which is Brahman, which is Atman. And this anitya vastu gives sukha sometimes, dukkha sometimes. It cannot give me anandam, which is eternal, permanent sukha without any form of dukkha. So let me discard my pursuit of these worldly goals and take up a sincere, full-fledged pursuit of Brahman, Satchidananda Swarupa Brahman, pursuit of Atma Jnana. This is Nivritti Dharma. Nivritti Dharma is for such a person. Such a person with this sankalpam, with this conviction that Brahman alone exists and Brahman alone I have to pursue, with this burning desire for moksham, he discards the pursuit of the world and in a full-fledged manner, one-pointed concentration, he takes up pursuit of Atman. That is Nivritti Marga, and that entails what I said previously as Shravana Manana Nididhyasa. The Upanishad says that such a person with these qualities has to go towards a guru and take upadesham from him and practice Shravana Manana Nididhyasa, and finally when that practice, that Shravana Chatushtaya fructifies, he attains Atma Jnanam and he becomes a Jivan Mukta. Now, I just noted in the passing that to do this, one has to have dispassion. There are fourfold qualities which Shankaracharya says that is needed. He has taken this from from the Upanishads and he has compiled it into fourfold practices. They are called as sadhana chatushtaya. Four eligibility criteria which are needed for sadhana. Yeah, that is Vedanta sadhana. There are viveka, that is discrimination between what is real, what is unreal, what is nitya, what is anitya. Then vairagyam or dispassion, mumukshutva or the burning desire for liberation, and then a group of qualities called Shatka Sampatti, 6 qualities, Shamadama, Uparati, Samadhana, Shraddha, etc. These are basically Indriya Nigra, control of the mind, control of the senses, and one-pointed Ekagra Chitta, one-pointed focus, one-pointed concentration, one-pointed meditation, capacity to focus on one thing at a time to the exclusion of all else. And finally, Shraddha in the Guru, in the Shastra. Now, in this list, this Indriya Nigraha, Samadhana, Shraddha, even Viveka, Vairagya, all these are principles of Dharma. All these are principles of Samanya Dharma. Dharma is divided into two portions, Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. Samanya Dharma is our general principles which are applicable to all humanity. Like the Manusmriti says, Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, Shaucham, Indriya, Nigraham. These are the 5 Samanya Dharma tenets. Ahimsa, non-injury. Asteya, non-stealing. Satya, truthfulness. Indriya Nigraha, control of the mind and the senses. Shaucham, and purity. All these are needed to even pursue Vedanta sadhana, because the question is, as we spoke about this sadhana chatushtaya, fourfold quality. Now, how do we develop this sadhana chatushtaya? It is through the practice of dharma anushtana and bhakti upasana. Because these qualities, the viveka and vairagya, indriya nigraha, I spoke about the samanya dharma qualities. When you practice the samanya dharma, you have this purification of your mind, chitta shuddhi. It is through chitta shuddhi alone you can gain these, you can overcome the impurities of the mind. What are these impurities? They are called as shadrupus, 6 enemies. Kama, Krodha, Moha, Madha, Matsarya. Now all these things, attachment, jealousy, anger, all this comes under it. So only when you purify your mind through practice of dharma, you can attain chitta shuddhi. So along with the practice of dharma, then you have to practice bhakti as well. So then the question is, what does practice of dharma means? And as I said, there are 2 aspects to dharma. One is samanya dharma, the other is vishesha dharma. Samanya dharma refers to all the ethical practices, all the ethical principles. I quoted Manu as saying 5 principles. There are others like Yajnavalkya adds some more principles to it. Mahabharata gives, I think, 8 or 10 such Samanya Dharma. Bhagavata Purana at one place gives as many as 33 principles as Samanya Dharma, as applicable to everyone. But there is something called as Vishesha Dharma, which is basically a tailor-made duties, tailor-made principles that is distinct for distinct individuals. This Vishesha Dharma is basically framed on the conceptual basis of Varnashrama Dharma, based on your Varna, your Swabhava, your station in life, that is Ashrama, whether you are a student, whether you are a Grihastha, your duties change. As a Grihastha, I presume most of the people attending here are Grihasthas. We have certain duties towards our spouses, towards our parents, towards our children, and we also have our professional duties towards the job we do, and we have a duty towards our own self, for our own abhyudaya and nishrayasa, our sadhana and everything like that. Sum total of it is Vishesha Dharma. There is Samanya Dharma and there is Vishesha Dharma. And when you keep practicing these dharma, then you slowly attain chitta shuddhi. In the Indic perspective, in the Hindu worldview, moksha or the pursuit of moksha is never said to be the only pursuit, only purushartha. Moksha is the only purushartha, is the ultimate purushartha, yes. And for the Nivritti Margis, that is the only purushartha they pursue for the sannyasins, yes. But for most of us who are in Pravritti Marga, in the Grihastha Ashrama, for us, all the 4 purusharthas are important. Moksha is the ultimate goal. But our immediate goal is called as Trivarga, Dharma, Artha, Kama. Kama refers to pursuit of our desires, pursuit of worldly pleasures, including sexual pleasure, but not limited to sexual pleasure. It includes any kind of pursuit of pleasure. Artha is pursuit of prosperity, pursuit of wealth, pursuit of power. And dharma is pursuit of ethics, pursuit of punyam, pursuit of, because this is an interesting aspect. When we speak about purusharthas, purushartha means purusha, artha. Purusha means human, artha means that which gives meaning to life, or the activities that are beneficial to one. When we speak about 4 purusharthas, we always speak in a particular order: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We don't change the order. Moksha comes at the last because it is the highest goal. Dharma but comes in the middle. Sorry, comes in the beginning. Why? Because if we are pursuing kama and artha in isolation, for example, I want to make money, lots and lots of money, and with the minimum of time. I can make it either through hard work. I work hard, I put in more hours and I earn that money, or I rob a bank and make that money. But each karma has a phala. And it is the duty of the Dharma Shastra, which speaks about dharma, to say that which karma gives which phala, and which phala is abhyudaya nishrayasa for us, which phala gives sorrow, increases bondage, gives us dukkha. Clearly, robbing a bank may elevate us immediately, but when the police catches up with us, we will end up in dukkha when we go to jail. You may say that many people don't go to jail. They have made crores and crores of rupees and living abroad. True. But the karma phala does not come in single way, and karma phala is such that you can never run away from it. You can run away from the courts, you can run away from the police, but you cannot run away from karma phala. There is a Puranic statement which says, whatever action you do, no matter it may take millions and millions of janmas, no matter it may take millions and millions of yugas, but the phala for that karma you will have to experience, whether good or bad. So it is the dharma which tells us, which guides us, which helps us, which facilitates us to pursue artha and kama in such a way that it does not lead to sorrow in the future. It does not lead to more attachment, more bondage in the future, but instead it elevates us. It gives us fruits of action without harming us in a negative. So that is why dharma is placed at the beginning. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So what are those principles? I already mentioned these principles. For example, take the principle of Indriya Nigraha. Now, if we have no control over our senses and the mind, then we may be tempted to do certain actions, pursue our desires. In the example I said, I want money, so let me just rob a bank. Or somebody is there are so many cases, when people, corrupt people, those who are corrupt, some others take advantage of those corrupt people by, making them fall into more corruption. Sometimes even the innocent people who are not corrupt, they are made corrupt by the office full of corrupt. But if you have Indriya Nigraha, then you will not fall for this. It is the lack of control of our desires, lack of control on our mind and the senses, that results in us to falling into adharmic ways, reckless ways of living, such that it results in dukkha for us. So this dharma is kind of a bridge between the pravritti marga and the nivritti marga. And there comes a stage when we are practicing them at the beginning. See, our shastras, though it says the ideal is moksha, for moksha you have to attain vairagyam, true, but it does not say that the path to attain that vairagyam is suppression of your desires. The true brahmacharya is not in suppression, is not when one suppresses by force one's sexual desires. That never works. That leads to lots of perversion. Instead, our Shastras has given a framework wherein we can fulfill those desires in a restrained way and slowly free ourselves from those desires. So, when you practice your day-to-day life, when you pursue artha and kama through dharma, by aligning your life, anchoring your life to dharmic principles, be it samanya dharma or your vishesha dharma, fulfilling your desires, fulfilling your happiness in a worldly sense, by doing your duties, by living ethical life, a time will come when you will slowly move from doing actions for the sake of results, that is sakama karma, to doing actions for the sake of duty, for the sake of doing that action, because it is our duty to do that action. That is nishkama karma, without pursuing the fruits. So through dharma, practice of dharma anushtana, you attain nishkama dasha. And when you practice, when you further continue this practice of nishkama karma, which is called as karma yoga. Karma yoga is this: you do your action, but without hankering for the fruits. Then comes a stage when you attain chitta shuddhi. Slowly you become free of the kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, all these internal impurities. And then along with this dharmanushtana becomes complete. The nishkama bhava becomes complete when you place all your actions, the fruits of action, even the doership of action, the sense of doership, that is, I am doing this, at the feet of the Bhagavan. Only then dharmanushtana fructifies. And that placing at the feet of Bhagavan is bhakti. You know, when we do puja, it may be Ganesh Chaturthi, it may be everyday puja. At the end, we chant this mantra, wherein we say Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu, or at the end we Narayanam Samarpayami. Yes, Smrityacha Namokta Tapojapa Kriyadeshu. We do this mantra is there. Whatever we have done in this sadhana, we place the whole action, the whole activity at the feet of Narayana, at the feet of Ishvara, at the feet of the Bhagavan. This is the act of bhakti. And the practice of bhakti begins with Nama Japa, Kirtana, listening to his Leela, and finally it moves forward with more and more deeper meditation, upasana, ritualistic sadhana, and upasana, and then meditation, deeper meditation on the form of Ishvara. That is Bhakti Yoga. So either this Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga can be practiced together, or when Karma Yoga has attained a particular stage, then you take to Bhakti Yoga, and finally from Bhakti Yoga, you ultimately go to Jnana Yoga, that is Shravana Chatushtaya, and finally attain Moksha. But some people practice Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga together, and then because they have a more inclination towards Patanjala Yoga, they take that path as well. And then through Patanjali Yoga, or even through Bhakti Yoga, they take to Jnana Yoga. So see, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, they are all connected. They are not completely independent paths. The Karma Yoga, which is nothing but Dharma Anushtana, and Anushtana of Dharma in a Nishkama Dasha, this is the foundation. On this foundation, the other spiritual practices are rooted. So when the title is Dharma and Adhyatma, Dharma is the foundation. When one becomes we root our life, we anchor our lives in this Dharma, and we practice Dharma, we pursue our desires, our desire for family, desire for pleasure, desire for prosperity through the mode of Dharma. First, we avoid the negative consequences of following adharma. We avoid the dukkha aspect of it. And then slowly we elevate ourselves. We attain a state of nishkama dasha. And then when you pursue this karma yoga further, we attain chitta shuddhi. And then through bhakti and other means, we attain ekagra chitta. And then we become eligible for Vedanta sadhana, and through Vedanta sadhana we attain moksha. So Chitta Shuddhi should be our immediate goal, because without Chitta Shuddhi everything is lost. Moksha is too far away a goal for us. To attain moksha, first we need to attain this Chitta Shuddhi. For this, we need to anchor our life in Dharma. So whenever, see, it is very, I have seen so many people. See, I am chief curator of Advaita Academy. We conduct regular lectures. I organize lectures on Vedanta, on Gita, on different aspects of Vedanta. Many people attend, and many people attend regularly as well. And it is a very good thing, because these lectures, this is Shravana, is Punyakara in itself. It gives Punyam just by listening. But it does more. It helps us to anchor our life into this Purushartha Drishti. But it often, it happens once in a while that I see some people who feel that because they have attended so many hours of workshop or so many hours of lectures on Vedanta, somehow they have become spiritual, somehow they have become adhyatmic. And some people I have even met once in a while, those who says, I have read this, I have read these many shastras, I have studied under this teacher, that teacher. So there is nothing more for me to understand. I have attained everything. This is where, this is a faulty understanding. This kind of understanding is misleading. And I'm just I want to caution the listeners to this, because no matter how many books you read, no matter how many lectures you listen, as long as that does not impel you, does not lead you to some form of action, some form of taking control of your life, then saying that, look, let me align my life to Purushartha. I have learned that moksha is the ultimate goal. I have learned that to become eligible to pursue moksha, I have to first attain Chitta Shuddhi. And by nature, I am a Karma Yoga person or I am a Bhakti Yoga person. So based on my nature, let me anchor myself to a dharmic way of life with either Karma Yoga or as the Bhakti Yoga as the basis, as the main mode of sadhana. Or there are other sadhanas like Mantra Sadhana and Tantra Sadhana, all those. Any path, fine. But we need to take control of our life and we need to align ourselves. We need to practice Dharma. Without practice of these basic dharmic principles, I mentioned about Samanya Dharma, right? Ahimsa, Satyam, Asteyam, and all those things. No spiritual practice will bear fruit. No matter you may do yoga for hundreds of years, You may do bhakti for many years. It will not fructify if your life is, you are not leading ethical life. You are not leading a dharmic. So just listening to lectures is not enough. That upadesham that you get from a guru should impel you, inspire you to take up a dharmic mode of living, take up a living wherein you abide by, you align yourself with through samanya dharma, through vishesha dharma, and practice ethical life, practice some form of sadhana. It may be bhakti, it may be mantra, it may be meditation, whatever it is. In fact, I'll just quickly, I'm almost towards the end of the session. I think we have some 20 minutes more, and I am to end in 5 minutes and take up some questions. I want to quote some, I just mentioned that whatever spiritual path you take, these basic principles of dharma is prerequisite, is the basic, it is must needed. Without that, you cannot attain success. I just want to quote some verses or some examples to show that this is not just I am saying from my side, but this is what the Shastras. For example, in yoga, the Patanjali yoga. See, today people by yoga think that doing some physical exercises is yoga. That is not true. See, the Patanjali yoga has 8 limbs. Starts with yama, niyama, then comes asana, and then pratyahara, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and finally samadhi. Before asana comes yama and niyama. So yama and niyama are the foundation. Without yama and niyama, how much ever you do breathing exercise, how much ever you do posture exercises, you will not attain higher stage. This is the basic is yama and niyama. So what are these principles of yama and niyama? The principles of yama and niyama include, yama includes ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. Ahimsa, satya, asteya already defined. Aparigraha means freedom from avarice. Niyama part includes shaucha or purity. Santosha, happiness. Tapa, austerity, control of the mind and senses. Swadhyaya, and Ishvara pranidhana. Ishvara pranidhana means devotion to Ishvara. Swadhyaya means self-study. That is Patanjali Yoga. Now take Bhakti Marga. In the Bhakti Marga, Narada Bhakti Sutra, I think Narada Bhakti Sutra says, to practice bhakti, a practitioner, a bhakta have to be rooted in these following ethical principles. Ahimsa, Satya, Shaucha, Daya is compassion, Astikya, conviction in the existence of Ishvara and of Veda as the pramana. And building upon this, the Vaishnava Sampradayas give a 7-stage process of bhakti called Sadhana Saptaha. And then, of course, in Vedanta, I already mentioned. In fact, I will just quote few Upanishads. The Katha Upanishad says that for a person who has a bad character and conduct, dushcharitam, a person who has no control on his mind and the senses, that is without indriya nigraha, such a person cannot attain Brahman through jnana. This is as explicit a statement as possible, that you cannot attain Brahman. You cannot practice Adhyatma without dharma, without living a dharmic life. If your dushcharita, if your life, if your conduct is dushtata, is filled with ill will towards others, is filled with adharmic actions, is filled with bad thoughts, ill thoughts towards others. See, Manusmriti says there are 3 kinds of adharma. We think that when we think about actions, we think that only the physical actions. But he says no. The 3 kinds are the adharma committed by body, adharma committed through the mind, adharma committed through our speech. Adharma committed by body includes stealing that which does not belong to us. It includes adultery and such things. Adharma through body includes murdering someone and all these things. Adharma through the speech includes harsh speech, backbiting, gossiping, and speaking ill of the Shastra, Ishvara, and such. We think that all of us include in practice do some kind of gossiping once in a while. See, doing some things in gesture or something funny, it's okay. But we also have some people. We all have must have come across some people in our life who in gesture we call them all India radio. You tell them something that and they will spread it to the whole world. We make fun of such people. But the point is, such action, the Shastras are clear that it is adharma. It is not good. It is not good. It gives dukkham. And harsh speech. Now today we have so many people abusing others left, right, and center. And Twitter is a toxic medium. If anybody of you are on Twitter, you would know how the debate gets heated up and how toxic it becomes. Harsh speech. And so these things are considered as adharma of the speech. And sometimes people say bad things, especially to hurt, with an intention to hurt somebody. So we have this famous statement that Satyam Vada, Priyam Vada, Apriya Satyam Na Vada, Priya Anrutam Na Vada. Speak truth, but speak it politely, Priyam, in a proper manner, in a calm and Priya manner, in a manner such that the other person is not hurt by it. Even when speaking bitter truth, speak in such a way that the effect of bitterness is reduced. And then there is the adharma of the mind. What is that? To even think about, to becoming jealous about others' wealth or others' position, others' power, or to become or to think about hurting somebody, even stealing something, even to think these activities is adharma. And the Manusmriti further says that those who perform adharma through the body in their next life, they will suffer. The fruit of the karma phala is such that they will suffer through the body. It may be any form. It may be any form. And those who do adharma through the speech, they will suffer through their faculty of speech in the next life. And those who do adharma through the mind, they will suffer through experiencing mental dukkha in their next life. So with keeping in this all this in mind, I just want to conclude by saying that without dharma, adhyatma is not possible at all. Speaking of adhyatma, discussing of adhyatma, attending lectures on adhyatma is not enough. They are all good activity because satsanga is good. Being in the presence of a guru and acharya is a very good thing. It is of highly beneficial. But the true benefit of it is when, inspired by these activities, we anchor our lives to dharma. We anchor our lives to these ethical principles. We anchor our lives to fulfilling our duties, to fulfilling our desires, the artha or kama, through this ethical life. Without and then practicing some form of spiritual activity. Sadhana, it may be doing your daily sandhya vandana, it may be doing a daily upasana, it may be giving arghya to Surya, it may be mantra sadhana, japa sadhana, or meditation, or we have so many kind of spiritual paths. Even studying Mahabharata, studying Bhagavata Purana, or studying the stotram, practicing the parayana of the stotram of Shankara Bhagavad Pada, all these give great punyam. So with this, I want to conclude my session on dharma and adhyatma. And I would be happy to take any of the questions you might have. And if you want to know more about dharma, about Samanya Dharma, as I said, my book Samanya Dharma is there. It is available on Amazon and other places. You can just take a look there. And my next upcoming book is Ishavasya Upanishad, and it's a product of my work for 7 years, and it is all due to the grace of the Guru and my Ishta uh, Kali Ma that I have been able to accomplish this work. And anybody who is interested in not just Vedanta per se, but even Adhyatma in general, and some of the ideas that I shared with you today, I've dealt in a more detail in this book. So you can look it out. I think by the end of this month, that book will be out. Thank you. Shri Guru Bhyo Namah.
Anybody has any questions, please, or you have any feedbacks? Meantime, Nitinji, the talk was very good actually. I liked it. Just one question related to karma. I haven't heard you talking more about the karma aspect, which was also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita or any other scriptures. So karma aspect as such, as I understand, is completely related with dharma, because you go out of dharma, that creates, I mean, you go, I mean, you can go part of the dharma, or you go out of the dharma, again you create karmas. So my question is, the creation of good karmas and nullifying of bad karmas, for this we have plenty of options. Like there is a problem of plenty. I would like to ask from you, what would be the best way to clear our bad karmas and also to create good karmas?
Yes. Yeah, so as I said, I did mention about karma. See, when we speak about dharma and dharma, we are basically speaking about actions themselves. In individual context, we cannot speak about dharma and adharma outside of the context of actions, because we are referring to actions. It may be at the body level, it may be at the mind level, or it may be at the level of the speech. So to come to your question, how do we increase our positive karma phala, that is sukha as karma phala, and how do we avoid dukkha as karma phala, right? So the second verse of Ishopanishad answers this, saying that Jiji Vishet Shatam Samaha. It says basically that if you want to avoid dukkam, if you want to avoid the bad fruits, the bad karma phalas, then you should avoid doing bad karmas itself. So the very first thing is you avoid doing activities which are adharmic. And I just mentioned before concluding that there are three kinds of adharmas: the adharma of the body, adharma committed through mind, adharma committed to speech. And all of us should strive our best to not commit those adharmas to the best of our ability, right? Especially the physical ones are comparatively easier. The mental ones are perhaps the most difficult. So we have to, through constant reflection, to constant awareness about our own thoughts and our own actions, we can keep our negative actions, negative thoughts, negative speech at the bay. And if you are in the habit of speaking in a way to hurt others, then you can control this through reflection, through being more aware, and through the indriya nigraha. But more importantly, I will like to bring a concept here. See, karmas are of three kinds: sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, and agami karma. Agami karma are those karmas which we are doing now, whose fruits we will face in future. So as far as agami is concerned, we have to do dharma, our actions has to be dharmic action, and we have to avoid adharmic actions. When I say dharmic actions, I mean that those actions which are ethical in nature, which align with the principles of ahimsa, satya, asteya, and all those things that I said, as well as doing our duties, because not doing our duties is also adharma. Not just killing someone is adharma, but not doing our duties. For example, for a dvija, not doing sandhya vandana is an adharma. So we should try our best to do it. So that is agami part. Prarabdha karma is basically the karmas which have started giving fruits, and they give our fruits in the sense of how the challenges we face in our day-to-day life, and we have to try to face it with calmness, with steadiness in the mind, as much as possible. It is easier to say and difficult to do, yes. As much as possible with a samadrishti, with a more sense of awareness, so that by coming into emotions, we do not become too attached to the happiness the prarabdha gives, or become too affected by the dukkha that prarabdha gives, or becomes too affected by the day-to-day happening. Again, it is easier to say, difficult to do. These things are developed over a long period of practice. The key is more awareness. And then there is sanchita karma, the big storehouse of karma that we have that is there. There is a storehouse of karmas that we have committed over many hundreds of lives that are yet to bear fruit. And how do we remove that? That is where sadhana comes into play. If you have noticed, in a sankalpa, be it of a Sandhya Vandana or any puja, Ganapati puja, or any Sankashti puja or Vinayaka Vrata, in all this sankalpa, there is something, there is a one line. Mama upata samasta durita kshayadvara. Mama upata, whatever I have done, durita kshaya. Durita means the papam that I have done. Kshaya, remove it. So I am doing this sadhana, this puja, this vidhi, so that I become free of the whatever papa that I have attached with this body mind complex. That is the sanchita karma, or even prarabdha karma as well. All this, the papam that is associated, that is stored in my causal karana sharira, let that slowly burn away. That is why this that is the result of these rituals. So that is how you get rid of the sanchita karma. And then you slowly travel to the concept. I mentioned about the concept of karma yoga, nishkarma karma. All these are concepts in from Bhagavad Gita and other texts as well. But Bhagavad Gita, what does Bhagavad Gita say? Bhagavad Gita says, Swadharmo nidanam shreya. Do your dharma. Swadharma. Don't try to perform others' dharma just because you think you're better at it. Do your swadharma even if you're not good at it, because that is what is beneficial to you. And then do it in a nishkama way. Do it in a, as much as possible, do it with a detachment. If detachment is not possible right away, then you surrender your actions at the feet of Ishvara. Every day, and when every day in the morning, you get up in the morning, you remember Ishvara. You know, many of us do this. Karagre vasate Lakshmi Karamadhye Saraswati Karamulistite Gauri Prabhate Karadarshanam. To this, we can just add, Bhagavanta, whatever action I am doing, help me that I live through a dharmic way, and I submit all my actions, fruits of action, doership of action to you. Similarly, do it in the night while before sleeping. That I had a long day, whatever it is, I submit to you, surrender to you. Through these simple changes in our life, we can develop good samskaras. We can develop sattva pradhana samskaras in our life. And these are some of the practical tips. It is not easy. Again, it is not going to happen in a 1 day or 2 day, or it is not even that somehow I am giving these all these tips out. Somehow I have attained all these things. Not far from it. I have not achieved 1% of it. But the point is, we all are in this for a long journey. The journey is very, very, very long. It will take many, many, many years, many, many lives we have in front of us. So let's start somewhere. We need to start somewhere. And one point I just want to make here is Krishna says to decide what is karya and akarya, what is to be done, what is not to be done. That is what is dharma and what is adharma. The Shastras are this pramana. Shastras refer to Veda, Shastras refer to Itihasa, Purana, Smriti, Dharma Shastra. These are the sources of knowledge. It is not that I can do anything on whims and fancy. Even a murderer can justify his murder, right? So we have to base our lives on the knowledge that the Shastra reveals. And so how do we know, understand it? You study the Shastra. Today the Purana, Itihasa, so Ramayana, Mahabharata, at one point of time, people used to study, perform everything. But now we have this misconception that at home you should not have Mahabharata. If you have Mahabharata at home, if you read Mahabharata at home, it will lead to it will lead to fights between brothers or something like that. That is complete superstition. That is complete meaningless and baseless thing. No, so many acharyas have also clarified that this is completely needless thing. It has no basis. So we should not give into all these nonsensical thoughts. We should study Mahabharata. Mahabharata is a great book. It's a book of dharma. Vyasa Maharshi has put in the Mahabharata says whatever you find in Mahabharata you may find elsewhere, but what is not here is nowhere else. Mahabharata is a jagat in itself. Study Mahabharata, study Ramayana, study the Puranas. Then we know what we should do, what we should not do. In what context we will know. When we face a context similar to what our ancestors faced, we know, oh, this person in this context acted this way. Perhaps if I act in this way, that would be proper. We can use our intellect, then decide and then reflect upon it, and then apply these teachings into our daily. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, I think it is answered. Shilpa is thanking. It's a feedback.
Sriram has, okay, I think he has sent to me privately. I can see a question here. Sriram has asked me a question. You have spoken about Indriya Nigraha, but how do we not feel a sense of anger at the adharma that we keep reading at societal level, political level, and challenges that our own desha faces from various external forces? That is a wonderful question, Sriram, and that is an important question. I will just give the example of Bhagavan Sri Rama. When the Samudra did not give him a way to go to Lanka, he becomes extremely angry and he lifts his bow, right? There is something called as righteous anger, but there is also something called as anger with attachment. Sri Rama could go from sorrow to anger through many of the emotions, but still stay unaffected by them inside him. You will see many teachers also feel anger, but in their hearts, they're always in a state of bliss. And this is what we need to attain. But currently, in our current stage, we get angry with so many things. But we need to understand that the anger clouds our judgment. It is natural to be angry. See, I just before coming on this session, I saw pictures of Murti of Bhadrakali near in Karnataka itself, I think near Bangalore or somewhere. Some miscreants, I don't know who, but some miscreants have desecrated the place, broken down the Murti. It pained my heart. Since Kali is my Ishta Devata, it pained me more, but more than that, I had huge anger in my mind seeing this. But what is the end goal of this anger, we need to understand. Recognizing what is adharma and fighting that adharma does not need to happen from this standpoint of anger. Need not be. At some stage, maybe, but not always. Anger can cloud our judgment as well. For example, when we are angry, we will not be knowing what is right or what is wrong. Worse, we will not be knowing that what course of action will give us the result that we require and what will not. Often we end up making mistakes. So it is very important that we take a step back and analyze the problem in a dispassionate way as much as possible. We are all creatures of emotion. We all act through emotion. But developing an Indriya Nigraha helps one to be not affected by these emotions and so see the things clearly. A good example is, you say, for example, imagine a leader who is in decision making in a war. There is a war going on. There is a leader there is an army commander or somebody who is in the decision making capacity. His decision decides upon the fates of his men. Do you think if he takes decision through anger, it will be a better decision rather than a commander who is able to control his anger, control his emotions? It is not that the emotion does not exist. He will control it, he will restrain it, and then take a decision. Then we will be able to please the situation clearly and take a better decision. Take a decision that will be overall beneficial. Sometimes we may win the war, we may win a battle, but lose the war. But sometimes we may lose a battle, we may have to lose a battle to win the war. The larger goal is winning the war, not just winning that particular battle. So that is why Indriya Nigraha is important. Without Indriya Nigraha, we will not be able to be even in control of our lives. You can just see so many people, being so to speak, given to the desires without any kind of, uh, restraint, that will always end badly. What is addiction? This is a very simple example. What is addiction? Lack of control is addiction. Is addiction ever good for anybody? Whatever be the object of addiction, it is never good. So I think it is important that anger is, yes, natural, but restraining it, controlling it is always beneficial. I think I have one more question here. What about Prayaschitta? Do you have the process to do it? The Shastras speak about many Prayaschitta, and I think this Prayaschitta depends upon the what you are doing this Prayaschitta is for. So it is not some general thing that you do Prayaschitta after everything. It is better specific Prayaschitta that is. I can take one or two more questions. I think.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we may end the session. Thank you so much once again. I think it was a thought-provoking session as well, knowledgeable session. Jnana Vruddha we call, right? So I saw a Jnana Vruddha in you actually. Lot of knowledge.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving your time. I hope we meet again with a different topic probably. I wish all the success for your new book. And thanks to all the participants for being patient.
Definitely.
So next week
Thank you.
we have
Shri Guru Bhyo Namah.
next week we will have a session on nutrition by Mansi Peshwe, one person from Maharashtra. So please be there for that session also. Thank you one and all. Namaste.